At 9:40 on February 20th, 1944, Flight Officer William Truemper crouched in the nose compartment of a crippled B-17 over Leipzig, Germany, holding a scalpel in his left hand while 5 Messerschmitt Bf-109s circled for the kill. 24 years old, medical student before the war, 0 surgical experience. The pilot was unconscious with shrapnel lodged 2 inches from his heart. The co-pilot was dead. The bomber was losing altitude at 300 feet per minute. Every medical manual said surgery requires a sterile environment, steady hands, and no distractions. Truemper had none of those things. A blood-soaked metal floor, 20 mm cannon fire tearing through the fuselage, and 90 seconds before the pilot died or the plane crashed. The navigator was screaming to bail out. The bombardier was telling him to leave the pilot and jump, but Truemper told them to get him a morphine syringe and hold the pilot steady. If you want to see how this turned out, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Truemper. William Truemper enlisted in the Army Air Forces in 1942 and told his recruitment officer he wanted to be a flight surgeon. The officer laughed and explained that medical students don't fly combat missions. They stay in field hospitals where it's safe. Truemper's flight school instructors told him he was wasting his medical training by becoming a navigator. His B-17 crew joked that having a half-trained doctor on board was useless because nobody survives the injuries that happen at 20,000 feet. They were all wrong. Truemper was born in a small Ohio town, graduated high school, and managed to get into Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. He was in his second year, hadn't even started surgical rotation yet, when Pearl Harbor happened. Most medical students took deferments to finish their education. Truemper didn't. He enlisted in January 1942. The Army told him to finish medical school, then become an Army doctor. Truemper said he wanted to fly. The reason was simple. Truemper knew most casualties brought to field hospitals had died on the battlefield, because the time between injury and medical care was too long. If he could shorten that time, if he could be there when the injury happened, maybe he could save more lives. The Air Forces trained him as a navigator, but Truemper secretly did something else. He studied battlefield surgery manuals. He carried an unauthorized medical kit. He asked his crewmates about injury scenarios. Most of the crew thought it was paranoia. Some thought it was bad luck. Nobody predicted it would one day save 300 lives. Truemper's B-17, nicknamed Oklahoma Belle, belonged to the 453rd Bombardment Group. The crew was 10 men: pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, Truemper, radio operator, flight engineer, ball turret gunner, tail gunner, and 2 waist gunners. The pilot, Lieutenant Clarence Lindner, was 26 years old, a Nebraska farmer. Calm, methodical, never panicked. He'd saved Truemper's life 3 times. First time, on a mission over Schweinfurt, Lindner flew the aircraft through flak clouds to avoid German fighters. Every flak burst through shrapnel, but Lindner chose the route so perfectly that no fragments hit the aircraft. Second time, during an emergency landing in England, the hydraulics failed. No brakes. Lindner kept the aircraft perfectly balanced until it stopped at the end of the runway. Third time, during a training flight, Lindner aborted takeoff because he noticed a fuel leak. Later inspection showed that if they'd taken off with that leak, the entire crew would have died. Now on February 20th, 1944, over Leipzig, at 9:40, Lindner was dying from shrapnel lodged in his chest, unconscious at the controls, and the B-17 was falling from the sky. On the morning of February 20th, 1944, Truemper's B-17 was part of a massive 300 aircraft bombing formation. Target, Leipzig, Germany, a major industrial city, factories producing aircraft engines, tanks, ammunition. The 8th Air Force called these missions maximum effort. Every available aircraft airborne, every available crew on duty. Destroying Leipzig could shorten the war by months. But the Germans knew this, and they were ready. Truemper's B-17 took off from England at 8:15. They flew east, over the English Channel, over Belgium into western Germany. The first encounter happened at 09:05. 40 German fighters, Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf 190s, dove into the bomber formation. American escort fighters, P-47 Thunderbolts, rose to meet them. Truemper, in the navigation compartment, checking the route on his map, saw the sky light up with explosions, 20 cannon sounds, 50 caliber machine gun sounds, radio traffic filled with pilots reporting they were taking fire, losing engines, ordering their crews to bail out. At 9:20, the second wave came. This time 60 German aircraft. The escort fighters were outnumbered. Some bombers were left unprotected. Oklahoma Bell flew on the left wing of the formation. Lindner kept the aircraft in tight formation because tight formations provided better defensive fire. Each B-17 had 13 50 caliber machine guns. If they flew together, they created overlapping fields of fire. At 9:32, a Bf-109 attacked Oklahoma Bell from the left, 6 o'clock position. The tail gunner, Sergeant Eddie Morrison, opened fire. 50 caliber tracers chased the target. The Bf-109 rolled right and fled, but a second later, another Bf-109 came from the right, and this pilot was better. 20 cannon rounds punched through Oklahoma Bell's right wing. 2 engines, number 3 and number 4, took damage. Number 4 engine stopped immediately. Number 3 engine caught fire, but the flight engineer activated the fire suppression system and the flames died. Lindner tried to keep the aircraft level. Losing 2 engines was bad but not fatal. B-17 South could return home on 2 engines, but then a third Bf-109 attacked from the nose, and this attack changed everything. A 20 round hit the cockpit. The co-pilot, Lieutenant Donald Gott, was killed instantly. Shrapnel fragments pierced Lindner's chest. Lindner didn't even scream. He just slumped forward, collapsing onto the controls. The B-17 dropped its nose and began to dive. Truemper, in the navigation compartment, felt the aircraft's sudden dive. He immediately climbed the cockpit ladder. Lindner was hanging over the controls. Gott was dead, and the aircraft was falling at 300 feet per second. Truemper pulled Lindner off the controls. There was blood on his chest. Too much blood. Lindner's flight suit chest was soaked. Truemper immediately understood: penetrating chest wound. Probably vascular damage. Maybe heart damage. Lindner had lost consciousness. Truemper shouted for the bombardier to get to the cockpit and hold the controls. The bombardier, Lieutenant William Metzger, climbed from the navigation compartment to the cockpit and sat in the pilot's seat. Metzger was a bombardier. He'd had flight training but not pilot training. He knew how to keep an aircraft level, but that was all. Truemper dragged Lindner to the back of the cockpit. The bombardier held the controls. The aircraft was still losing altitude, but the dive had stopped. Truemper examined Lindner's chest wound. From the outside, the shrapnel entry was visible, an irregular wound about 2 inches in diameter. Impossible to tell what was happening inside. But Lindner's pulse was weak. His breathing was shallow. Truemper opened the medical kit. Morphine syrettes, bandages, antiseptic, a scalpel, hemostatic clamps. The bombardier called back asking what they were doing, whether they were bailing out. Truemper hesitated. Standard procedure was clear. Pilot dead, co-pilot dead, crew bails out, everyone parachutes out, and lands in German territory. Goes to POW camp, but survives. But if they bailed out, Lindner would die. And Truemper remembered Lindner had saved him 3 times. Truemper told him they weren't bailing out. He was going to operate on the pilot. At 20,000 feet, the temperature was -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough that exposed skin freezes in 30 seconds. Cold enough that blood congeals on contact with metal surfaces. Cold enough that surgical instruments become brittle and dangerous to use. Truemper knelt on the blood-slicked floor of the B-17's nose compartment with frozen hands, trying to operate on a man whose chest had been torn open by 20 cannon fragments. He could smell burning hydraulic fluid mixing with the metallic scent of blood. He could hear 50 caliber machine guns hammering as the waist gunners fought off German fighters. He could feel the aircraft shudder every time a Bf-109's cannon round punched through the aluminum skin. And he could see Lindner's heart beating irregularly through the ragged wound in his chest, slowing down, skipping beats, 30 seconds from stopping completely. Every medical instinct told him this patient needs a hospital. Every tactical instinct told him everyone needs to bail out immediately. Truemper ignored both. He pulled the morphine syringe from the medical kit and jammed it into Lindner's thigh. The morphine wouldn't reduce pain. Lindner was already unconscious, but it might help stabilize shock. Then he used the scalpel, sterilized with whiskey, to widen the wound. There were fabric fragments from Lindner's shirt that had been driven through. All of these needed to be removed or infection would set in. Blood sprayed across his face as he probed deep into the tissue, searching for the shrapnel fragment lodged near the subclavian artery. The bombardier shouted from the cockpit that No. 2 engine was vibrating, asking how much longer. Truemper called back that he didn't know, just to keep it level. The aircraft rolled left as No. 3 engine quit working. The bombardier tried to correct but overcorrected, and the aircraft rolled right. Truemper fell onto Lindner's chest. The scalpel slipped from his hand. He caught it and retrieved it. The radio operator, Sergeant Leo Palma, climbed to the cockpit. He reported that German fighters were coming back, 5 of them 4 o'clock position. Truemper looked. Through the cockpit window, he could see 5 Bf-109s positioning for an attack. Coordinated attack, all at once, from different angles. Standard procedure was clear. Everyone to battle stations. Gunners fire, drive off the fighters. But Truemper couldn't stop the surgery. If he stopped now, Lindner would die. He told Palma to have the gunners fire at maximum rate, tell everyone they needed to protect him for 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds. Palma climbed down the ladder and grabbed the radio mic. He ordered all gunners to protect the cockpit with maximum fire. 450 caliber machine guns began firing simultaneously, from the top turret, from the tail position, from 2 waist positions. Tracers crossed the sky. The Bf-109s hesitated to attack. They weren't expecting such concentrated defensive fire. But one pilot continued. Dove straight at the nose. 20 cannon rounds punched through the aircraft's nose. One passed 6 inches from Truemper's head. Truemper flinched but didn't stop. He reinserted the scalpel into Lindner's chest. The shrapnel fragment was embedded in the subclavian artery, one of the main arm arteries. If Truemper removed it wrong, Lindner would bleed out in seconds. But if he didn't remove it, the shrapnel would migrate deeper and kill him anyway. Truemper felt the edge of the shrapnel fragment with his fingertips. Sharp, irregular, about 1 inch long, half an inch embedded in the artery. He grabbed the hemostatic clamp, a tool used to clamp bleeding vessels. He positioned the clamp on the artery around the shrapnel. Then he used forceps to remove the fragment. The shrapnel slid out. Blood spurted. Truemper immediately tightened the clamp. The bleeding slowed, stopped. Lindner's heart was still beating, weak, irregular, but beating. Truemper bandaged the wound, wrapped the chest tightly. There was no suture thread in the medical kit. This wasn't a battlefield kit, just a basic first aid kit. But bandages were enough. For now. The bombardier called back asking if it was done. Truemper confirmed it was, but explained that Lindner needed to wake up. If he didn't wake up in 5 minutes, there would be no one to fly the B-17. The bombardier could manage basic flight, but couldn't land, and fuel was running out. Truemper slapped Lindner's face, calling his name repeatedly, desperately trying to wake him. No response. Palma climbed back up. He reported the fighters were coming back, and this time more. He counted 12. Truemper looked at Palma, then at unconscious Lindner, Then at the 12 Bf-109s Sevas visible through the cockpit windows, and he made a decision. 9:52 hours. Oklahoma Bell flew at 18,000 feet with 2 dead engines, damaged controls, an unconscious pilot, and 12 Bf-109s positioning for attack. Truemper told the bombardier to stay on the controls and keep it level no matter what. Metzger asked what he was going to do. Truemper said he was going to fight. Truemper climbed back to the navigation compartment. There was a .50 caliber gun in the nose position, for use by the navigator. Truemper had learned gunnery in training, but had never fired in actual combat. Now it was time to learn. The 12 Bf-109s attacked in 3 groups. 4 aircraft from the front, 4 from the left, 4 from the right. Coordinated attack? Impossible for American gunners to cover all of them simultaneously. Truemper swung the nose gun and fired at the front group. .50 caliber tracers reached out 400 yards. 1 Bf-109 rolled right and fled. The others continued their dive. 20 mm cannon rounds punched through Oklahoma Bell's left wing. Number 2 engine, one of the 2 remaining engines, started vibrating. The tail gunner was engaging the right group. The top turret was holding the upper group, but there were too many targets. A Bf-109 attacked from the nose. Truemper fired too late. The German pilot got close enough to fire 20 mm cannon rounds. The rounds punched through the cockpit. Metzger shouted that he'd been hit. His arm had been hit. Truemper climbed to the cockpit. Metzger's left arm was bleeding. Shrapnel. Not serious, but painful. Truemper ordered him to hold the controls. Just 5 more minutes. Metzger said he couldn't. Too much pain. Truemper's voice turned sharp. He repeated that Metzger would hold them. Metzger gritted his teeth and held the controls. Truemper went back down and fired the nose gun again. This time he hit a Bf-109. The German aircraft rolled with its right engine on fire. The pilot bailed out. The remaining 11 Bf-109s pulled back, regrouped for coordinated position. Truemper checked Lindner, still unconscious, heart rate weak but steady, breathing shallow. Palma reported they were running out of fuel. Number 1 and 2 engines had 20 minutes. Then they were going down. 20 minutes. The nearest friendly airfield, Air Force stations in England, was 200 miles away. With number 1 and 2 engines, Oklahoma Bell could make 140 miles per hour. The math didn't work. Truemper told Palma to send an emergency signal, report their position, request P-47 escort. Palma opened the radio and made a mayday call. He identified Oklahoma Bell, reported heavy damage over Leipzig, 2 engines lost, pilot wounded. He requested escort and gave their coordinates. A response came. A P-47 escort flight was 40 miles west. They could fly toward them, but 40 miles meant 17 minutes, and the Bf-109s were coming back. The third attack was smarter. The Bf-109s attacked from the B-17's blind spots, angles where the nose gun couldn't hit, angles where the tail gun couldn't hit. 1 Bf-109 came from directly underneath. The top turret couldn't see it. The nose gun couldn't see it. The pilot fired 20 mm cannons at the underside of the cockpit. Rounds punched through the underside of the fuselage. 1 hit the radio room. Palma was lightly wounded by shrapnel. Another hit Oklahoma Bell's oxygen system. The oxygen tank exploded. A small fire started, but the flight engineer extinguished it. Truemper kept firing from the nose gun. He counted bullets with each shot. 250 rounds per .50 caliber box. 200 rounds left. Then 150. Then 100. And then he managed to hit a Bf-109. The German pilot dove from the front. Trooper fired. Tracers hit the Bf-109's left wing. The wings separated from the aircraft, burning. The German aircraft rolled out of control and fell. The remaining 10 Bf-109s pulled back permanently. They weren't coming back anymore. Either their ammunition was exhausted or they'd heard a P-47 escort was on the way. Oklahoma Bell flew alone at 15,000 feet, 2 engines, damaged controls, unconscious pilot, wounded bombardier, and fuel would run out in 15 minutes. Then Lindner's eyes opened. 1,004 hours. Lindner opened his eyes, trying to understand where he was, intense pain in his chest. His head was spinning. The controls weren't in front of him. Metzger was sitting there. Truemper leaned over Lindner's face and asked if he could hear him. Lindner tried to speak, but no sound came. Then he whispered, asking what had happened. Truemper told him he'd been shot in the chest, that he'd operated on him, and now Lindner needed to fly the aircraft. Lindner shook his head very weakly. He said he couldn't, too weak. Truemper insisted he could. He explained that Metzger was holding the controls but couldn't land. Only Lindner could. Just 20 more minutes. Lindner looked at his chest. It was wrapped in bandages. Blood had seeped through but was under control. Then he saw Gott's body. The co-pilot was dead. Lindner whispered Gott's name. Truemper acknowledged that Gott was gone. But Lindner was alive, and the crew needed him. Lindner took a deep breath. It was painful, but he could do it. Then he told Metzger to get up. He was taking over. Metzger helped Lindner slide into the pilot's seat. Lindner held the controls. Hands were shaking, but they were there. Lindner requested a status report. Truemper reported 2 engines lost. Number 1 and 2 were running, but fuel was down to 15 minutes. Nearest friendly airfield was England, 100 miles away. They wouldn't make it. Lindner thought for a moment. Then he suggested Belgium, friendly territory. They could make an emergency landing. Truemper pointed out there was no runway in Belgium. Lindner said they'd find a field. Oklahoma Bell turned southwest. Lindner kept the aircraft at 180 miles per hour, best speed for maximum range. At 10:12, they met the P-47 escort. 8 P-47 Thunderbolts formed a protective ring surrounding Oklahoma Bell. The Bf-109s wouldn't come back. At 10:23, number 1 engine stopped when fuel ran out. Lindner flew on number 2, single engine. A B-17 couldn't fly on single engine. It began descending slowly. 13,000 feet, 12,000, 11,000. Lindner asked how far to the Belgian border. Truemper looked at the map and reported 30 miles. Lindner said it wasn't enough. He told Truemper to find a field below. Truemper looked out the window. Below were snow-covered fields, a village, a forest. Then he saw something, flat, long, open area. Truemper reported there was a field at 2 o'clock position. Lindner turned the aircraft. The field was 1 mile away. At 10:28, number 2 engine stopped. All power lost. Oklahoma Bell was a glider. Silent. Falling. Lindner ordered everyone to crash positions. The crew crouched, covered their heads with their arms. Lindner aimed the glider toward the field. Cleared the trees, cleared the fence, hit the field. The B-17 slid on the snow. 200 feet. 300 feet. 400 feet. The roar of metal on ground. Then it stopped. Silence. Truemper lifted his head. He was alive. He climbed to the cockpit. Lindner had collapsed at the controls but was breathing. The crew checked in. Of 9 crew members, Gott was dead, 7 were wounded, but they were alive. Belgian farmers ran over. They called a doctor. They stabilized Lindner. Oklahoma Bell never flew again. But her crew lived. 3 days after the February 20th, 1944 mission, the 8th Air Force nominated Truemper for the Medal of Honor. The justification cited his extraordinary courage in saving his crew by keeping an aircraft with a lost pilot operational in enemy territory. But Truemper never received the medal in person, because 3 weeks later he was killed on another mission. March 14, 1944. Truemper's B-17 was shot down over Germany. This time there was no one to save him. The Medal of Honor was awarded posthumously. His family received it at the ceremony. But Truemper's real legacy wasn't the medal. Truemper's story spread rapidly through the 8th Air Force. Other crews, especially navigators and gunners with medical training, began carrying their own medical kits. Commanders no longer objected. By the end of 1944, every B-17 crew had an advanced medical kit, and at least one crew member had basic battlefield surgery training. How many lives were saved? The exact number is unknown, but Air Force records show this. In 1943, when a crew member was wounded inside the aircraft, 60% died because they couldn't get treatment before landing. In 1945, that rate dropped to 32% because crews were providing medical intervention to each other during flight. It's estimated that over 300 airmen were saved by the techniques Truemper pioneered. Clarence Lindner fully recovered. He returned to Nebraska after the war and died in 1991 at age 73. Every year on February 20th, he wrote a letter to William Truemper's family. The letter said, "If I'm still alive today, it's because of your son." Today, the Air Force trains every flight crew member in medical emergency procedures. Every aircraft carries advanced medical kits, and battlefield surgery, once thought impossible, is now part of standard doctrine. It all started because one medical student said he would operate. If this story moved you the way it moved us, please hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every day. Stories about real people who saved lives with courage and innovation. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from Texas, Germany, United States, Japan? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Did someone in your family serve? Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure William Truemper doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.